Okay, it is 5 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're on item number 2, which is approving tonight's agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, and a second. All those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Pull same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have identify a date for the canvassing of the special election. I think we're, what are our options there?
The date ranges is from May 11th to the May 18th, so it has to be in that date range.
I'm not available the 11th. The rest of the days I am.
Okay. Anyone else know their schedule at that time? I think in the past it's been done at 7 a.m. is my understanding.
Yep.
How long does it usually take?
It's very quick, 5 minutes. Okay, is Thursday the 18th, is that 17th? Okay. So, you want to do it Friday the 18th, if that works? Okay, let's plan on Friday the 18th then at 7 a.m. Do we need a motion to do that? Yeah, we would do it here. Okay.
So like at 5:45? I mean, it'd be at the high school, obviously. Well,
5:30.
5:30.
Okay, let's do 5:30 on the 18th. I would entertain a motion for that.
17th then?
Okay, motion's been made for May 17th at 5:30. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the date of May 17th at 5:30 signify by saying aye. Aye. Pull same sign. Motion carries.
And just one thing related to that, I have 3 board members who have indicated that they have an interest in attending. The results are coming in tomorrow night. Do we have a 4th who wants to show up? If so, we'll put a notice for a special board meeting. Otherwise, we'll just go with the 3, and then we won't need to post for it.
I will not be there.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just go with the 3. Okay.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the study session. We have Brad Lundell from the Schools for Equity and Education giving us an update.
And I'll certainly be heading back there, but it's kind of every year takes on its own special flavor, and we've got it's kind of a blender that's going on right now, and we've got less than 2 weeks before they have to finish. They have to finish on Sunday the 20th, and when they can't pass anything on the last day of the biennium, and that's the 21st, and so it's going to be flying hot and heavy in the next couple of weeks. The things that they're looking at right now, the things that they really want to get done are the tax bill, because the conformity with the federal tax changes, if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a headache for most Minnesota tax filers. And then the other thing that they really want to get done is the bonding bill. Right now, they're putting together one giant appropriations bill that encompasses all the funding agencies and funding purposes that the Minnesota state government has, and I've been doing this for over 40 years now, and the process just gets kind of crazier and crazier every year. And what they're doing this year is it's like a 500-page plus bill. It's starting to look like the Congress with one big bill, and then how they're going to negotiate that out. They probably will start negotiating that out this week. And I think that we can talk a little bit about some of the things that are in there and some of the things we hope to see happen. But first, let's go through I think everybody, the history of C. And I'd urge you all to visit the C website, because I know it's a little bit of a drive to get up to our general membership meetings. All of our general membership meeting information is on the website. In fact, we tape the presentations. And so if you ever want to watch those presentations, and we usually have somebody that does policy and someone does a political presentation as well. So I just urge all of you to take a look at that. And again, to contact us when you think there are subjects you want to see addressed at a general membership meeting. We can move to, again, we're about 1/3 of the school children in the state. Where Albert Lea fits in very strongly is in that second, or the third bullet there with the lower property value, because you don't have a lot of high-value property. And you'll see as we move to some of the comparisons on the property wealth, how low your property wealth is, both in the, especially on a statewide basis. And what we've worked on over the years is to equalize those levies, so the state will participate in those levies, so that taxpayers in the Albert Lea School District aren't paying more for the same education dollars. So I can move to the next here. I guess it's not a constant presence at the Capitol because I'm here right now, but I think I'm at the Capitol pretty much every day, and we've been watching things this year. Again, it's been kind of an interesting session because things have been kind of going all over the place. We just know there's a lot of policy in both the bills that we think might end up not happening, but we'll talk a little bit about some of those things. We try to do more at our general membership meetings. We meet 6 to 7 times a year. We also have regional meetings. The regional meeting for this area is in Owatonna. We have those 3 times a year. We try to give folks the ability to interface with other school districts with challenges. I mean, I think that there are, we're having, Albert Lea is a prime example, along with Austin and Fridley, that are districts that have high levels of English language learners, and there are strategies that at general memberships where we can talk about some of how districts are addressing those things differently. And so again, to network is, we think, is something of value. Data and resources that are specific to your school district. We have a lot of data on the web and on our Schools for Equity website. And also Deb Griffiths is our community outreach liaison, and she comes out to districts and does a more jargon-free presentation than I do. And so she often works with community groups to talk about some of the things, working with legislators, working with ballot questions and things like that. Here's the first comparison sheet, and you'll see that Albert Lea is a district that's above the state average in terms of property, in terms of revenue per kid, and that comes down to compensatory, where you're above state average, and that's really the place where you are. That pretty much shows the difference between you and the state average. Is that makes up about $520 worth of the $600 that you're above the state average. You've got a high referenda down here compared to other C districts, and you've put out a lot of effort for that. A lot of effort compared to other districts to get to that level. But again, this is kind of the data that we put together to show where you fit in both the average of the state and average of the other C membership. If you can move to the next slide, this shows you the referendum market value. This is where you have on your equity levy, but also your voter-approved referenda and the local option revenue. And you'll see that Albert Lea is well below the state average. And if you look at the metro average, you're about basically almost just a little more than half of the metro average. And I think that shows that you look at the districts in the metropolitan area where they're getting higher levels of referendum, they're doing that with less tax effort than what's happening here in Albert Lea. And that's why the equalization is so very, very important for districts like Albert Lea. If you turn to the next one, the ANTC, and this is an interesting thing. If you look at the non-metro, Albert Lea is not a big ag land district. You've got a fair amount of ag property, but if you look at some of those districts in the non-metro area, you get out to western Minnesota where you've got very few kids and very big tracts of farmland, and so their value per pupil is going to be much, much higher, simply because it's something that's, again, the denominator is pretty small, and when the denominator is small, you can have it doesn't take a lot of value to make it look like you're a lot richer than you are. And in the case of Albert Lea, though, it's, again, not a lot of commercial industrial property and enough students that the ag land value on a per pupil basis, which is, again, we're trying to work on the debt service, and I understand you've got a debt service election tomorrow, and good luck with that. I hope that it passes. And I think that one of the things we continue to work on is to get more state participation in those debt service levies as well. We had some money in the Senate tax bill last year, but it didn't hit the priority list. And I think the Senate tax bill was about $1 billion plus in tax cuts, and when that got cut to less than $600 million, a lot of things fell out of the truck, and we were one of the things that fell out. But that's one of the things that we're continuing to work on. And again, as you work with your legislators, always mentioning that debt service. But again, tomorrow I'm just I'm going to be hoping for you, put it that way. So, and again, I know that you've worked very hard on this, and hopefully you can come home with success tomorrow. Looking at just what we did last year, some of the things we did, worked on the 2% on the basic formula, which isn't enough, but that's where everything ended up. The new teacher licensure framework that is still being kind of hashed out, and there's been a lot of intellectual wrestling matches over what those new rules should look like for the coming year, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we do the legislative update. But then also, we worked on the greater access to quality school-based early childhood programs. The governor's tried to extend that and make that permanent into the base, and we've supported that this year. The legislature is being very resistant to that. And then also, we highlighted the needs for the debt service and referendum equalization, and we were able to get it in the governor's budget and the Senate tax bill, and hopefully that will be a harbinger when they come back next year, provided the economy continues to do well, provided that there's going to be money on the bottom line, that we think we have a chance to do some things there as well. If you want to look at the next slide, and this is what we're doing right now, and again, I've got the side-by-side here, but also, if you look at the three school safety proposals, the House increases it from $36 per pupil to $54 per pupil, which that is $18. It's all aid. And then the current Safe Schools levy is equalized at a very low rate. The Senate has a one-time, the first year, which is the coming school year, is $16.23. Now, I don't know why they, shaved it down into the 23 cents area, but that is, basically what you're looking at is a little over $50 per pupil for next year, but then that goes back down to where it's going to be about $40 in the years going forward. The new revenue is all aid, and there's no changes, no equalization of the current levy. The governor increased it $18 per pupil for the coming school year, all aid, because the levy's been set. And then the Safe Schools revenue is increased another $18 per pupil starting in pay 19 for fiscal 20, and that's going to be an aid levy mix, and again, equalized at a very low rate. There were 2 special education proposals, and I've got the numbers in there for what it would mean for Albert Lee. House File 4272, which was authored by the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, was looked at districts with high levels of cross-subsidy. That means the dollars you're taking from your general fund to pay for unreimbursed special ed costs. And they spend about $20 million, of which $355 million would go to Albert Lee. The governor's recommendation was more about about $16 million, and you're spreading it to almost all the districts in the state. So you can see there, well, $17 million, and again, they're looking at the formula and not at, you know, a specific set of districts. And so they're looking, it'd be about $100,000 or $104,000 for Albert Lee. The latest thing that has come in is the governor's emergency funding, and he's talked about a one-time infusion of revenue of $126 per pupil for the next school year, the 18-19 school year. Again, that'd be $568,000 for Albert Lee, and he's been pushing that. I think that he had the press conference last Tuesday where he announced that, and then on Thursday he pushed it again. And I just spoke with one of the education staff when I made it into the parking lot here and could call her back, and they're really going to put the full court press on here. Whether or not the legislature buys in is going to be you know, the question, but I think that he's trying to negotiate very strongly for this position, and things will be, again, there's going to be a lot of things flying around in the next 2 weeks, and so I think that he's trying to capitalize on that chaos and try to move things, move some of this money into a one-time formula increase. One of the things that's scary to me, again, someone who's been around this business as long as I have, is it's almost like we're going to annual budgeting. And I know that that's for school districts that need stability and want stability and some kind of predictability in your funding. That's, you know, that would be kind of throwing a monkey wrench into a lot of different things. And so we're hopeful that that doesn't become the pattern. Next. Okay, for, again, going off goals for 2019 and beyond, again, we're always going to be looking at the basic formula. We're always going to be looking at making school levies more fair, looking at adoption of the remaining recommendations of the School Facilities Task Force, where the long-term facilities maintenance revenue came from. We want to, you know, do more for districts that aren't in QComp. We want to participate in that. There's going to be a special education funding task force to develop changes to the formula to make the special ed formula more adequate and equitable, and we want to work on that. And then also we want to continue working with districts that have unique needs and help those districts you know, meet those needs. Again, we've worked a lot over the last few years on the English language learning, and I think that that's a formula. To me, it's the best formula. It's just that it's woefully underfunded, because you identify the children that aren't speaking English, you move them to the point where they are speaking English, and you can pretty much draw a direct line to the services that you're providing and the cost of those services. And so I think that's one of the things that hopefully as the legislature continues, that they'll look more closely at that formula. It's not a formula that's going to break the bank, but again, it's something that I think is really needs to be looked at more closely. So if you can move to the next, there's our mission statement. And again, every student in the state of Minnesota, the students in Albert Lee are going to be competing for the same jobs and same college slots in college that they are in other parts of the state. So we want to make sure the students that are coming out of Albert Lee are prepared to make that next step. And that next step could be any number of things. It could be 4-year college, 2-year college, can be a career technical path, or more and more, I think that finding ways to get this. There are some students that are still going to go straight into the job market, and we want to make sure that when they walk across the stage with that diploma, that they've got the skills that they need. I think there's one more slide. Okay, here's, if you need to get a hold of us, there's my email. I'm usually best caught by cell, and again, our web address is www.schoolsforequity.org, and I really urge you all to head there and look at some of the things we have. And again, you're not our meetings. Everybody here pretty much has a job, so it's hard to get out in the middle of the day to come drive up to St. Paul to come to a meeting. But I guess that's why we put those meetings online, and we think that we really work hard to make sure that those meetings provide value in terms of what members want. At our May meeting on May the Thursday before Memorial Day, we're having the folks from the dyslexia community come in and talk about some of the things that they see, their priorities, and also what they think that they can help school districts, looking at that dyslexia, the new mandates, the looking around dyslexia, but then also we hope to have the Department of Education will be coming, and hopefully they'll have good news as some of the good things that have happened. With that, I think if you want to look at the side-by-side that goes into a little bit more detail, there are a few things that are a little bit, some of the policy that's been a little bit problematic. The five-star rating system, folks were talking about going back to the five-star rating system for school ratings, and I think that right now that doesn't look like it's going to happen. It was pulled out of the Senate bill on the day that the education policy bill was on the floor. That was pulled out, and it's not in the governor's bill, and the governor's basically said that he would veto any bill with that in it. The governor wanted to have he wanted to have policy and funding in separate bills, and I think at this juncture, I don't know if we're going to have that, if that's going to happen. But I think that that's one of the things, again, that there's a lot of policy that's kind of a little bit problematic. The other thing is, I don't know if many of you hear the academic balance bill, and again, it's a bill, I think it's in some cases, it came out of the Edina School District, that there was, I don't know if you folks have read about what has happened in Edina, but there was they kind of put in a new curriculum around kind of a social justice curriculum, and some people felt that the teachers were being too aggressive in promoting the social justice platform, and so there's been some pushback in the community. And I think one of the things, I think most schools, if you have teachers that are kind of going out of bounds on some of their personal beliefs or penalizing students for, the thing is that there were some parents that are saying, my child is being penalized because we voted for Trump, or we're of this religion or that religion, and so I think that there was some, but again, I think most districts are already have figured out how to handle that, and but again, so when in doubt, have a statewide policy, right? So let's and as I've always said, it's like instead of punishing the guilty, suspect the innocent. That's kind of when the legislature starts talking about mandates. That's usually the way it goes. Other than that, I think that the governor didn't have a very healthy, what I would say a healthy policy initiative this year. They've talked about testing for lead in school district water. I think the other thing is, as I was driving down, I was listening to public radio, and they're talking about radon testing in schools now too. That's coming late to the game, so I don't think that's something to think about this year. But again, going down into the future, we're going to be talking about that as well. Why don't at this point, why don't I just answer it? I can open it up to questions, and I guess whatever you folks need to know as to what's happening right now. Again, it's going to be 2 weeks of what's that? The Fast and Furious? Is that only it won't be with cars? It'll be people, kind of running around the rotunda, and I guess I get to play Vin Diesel. I know that much about those movies. But I think the best possible outcome here is going to be a clean school safety bill. School safety is in, and I think that the challenge always given to the governor throughout the session was, if school safety is so important for you, why didn't you introduce a clean school safety bill? And finally, in the last month, that he they took the school safety provisions and introduced them. That's a vehicle for doing the school safety. What that looks like, if I were to guess, I would guess it's probably going to look more like the House bill, which is going to be the $18, and it's going to be all aid. The other thing, there are some things in the House bill as well, though, that threat assessment teams, audits, physical plant audits, to figure out, school safety audits. I think the other thing, there's money for school resource officer training in the House bill as well. All of these bills, all of these approaches to school safety allow for flexibility. That if you want to hire people, you can hire people. If you want to, do some physical plant upgrades, you can do that. The other thing that the House did, and I forgot to mention this, is the House didn't add to the long-term facilities maintenance revenue, but they do open up school safety improvements are allowable under that umbrella. So if you haven't used all your long-term facilities maintenance revenue, you can levy for additional revenue under that long-term facilities maintenance and use that for school safety upgrades. And again, that's going to be for things like, the entry, more secure entries. I think cybersecurity is another thing that folks have been talking about. I think another thing is the loudspeaker systems, cameras, those types of things I think are also going to be allowable. I think in the end that might be the place where the discussion kind of centers in on. But again, we're still negotiating here, and I think the governor is really, it depends on how successful the governor is in getting that one-time money for schools as to what might be dollars that are left over. So any questions that anybody has?
Could you explain a little bit what you were saying at the beginning about the effort that we put into referendums and how our numbers kind of don't look the same?
Well, it's, I always look at it this way. If you're track was the only sport that I was even reasonably good at. Every time a high-value district runs around the track, they get $3. Every time Albert Lea runs around the track, they get $1. So I guess that's, if you want to get the same amount of money, you got to run 3 times around the track. Now the problem gets to be is that if you get $3 every time you run around the track, the incentive is pretty high to keep running. And so a district like Albert Lea gets really, really tired trying to catch up. Now what we do with the equalization, and this is what we try to do with the equalization, is to make sure that you'll get maybe $2.50 when you run around the track, and the state's going to throw in that $2.50 in addition to your $1 of local effort. That's kind of what the equalization does. It doesn't ensure equal dollars. What it does is ensures equal yield or close to equal yield for your taxpayer for every increment of tax effort. So that's really kind of, that's how this organization really started. We've kind of branched into a lot of other discussions over the years, but what we really were about when the organization was founded in 1979 was there were about, we all know who the culprits are, but they were the folks that were passing big levies, and no one else in the state could afford to pass a levy. And so what we've worked is to get the state to participate in these levies.
So is it basically then, since Albert Lea has such a low property tax level, that us compared to someone in the metro or maybe even Faribault for X amount of dollars, it's actually more?
Yes.
Kind of a higher impact on our taxpayers.
Right. Yeah. For on your average home, it's probably going to be more for the effort, and I think that's really a credit to you as a school board and as a school district that you've gotten your voters to approve a very healthy referendum. And again, the state's participating in a lot of that. But, when you get to the higher levels, there's different tiers of the referendum. And when you get to those higher levels, it's pretty much all local. And so I think it's a real credit to you folks to been making the case as to we need this money and we're delivering on what we promised to deliver.
And just for clarity, the referendum that's up for tomorrow, then, there is no state adding to that. It's just that's all local money that we...
I would have to look at the data, but I believe it's going to be all local for you. Maybe it depends on if you're going to get over the second threshold. If you're over the second threshold, you will get some state state money on that. But again, this is, I didn't, I've contributed to the complexity here, but I only was a partial contributor. I think that we need to make these things more transparent, but I think that if you hit over the second threshold of the debt service effort, you will get some state aid on that. I don't know, do you get to the second threshold?
I don't understand what that is. Can you explain
Well,
that?
the first threshold, the debt service has 3 thresholds. The first 15% of your local effort or thereby is all local. Then there's between 15% and 26% of that's going to be equalized at a fairly low rate. You wouldn't qualify. It's the what's called the equalizing factor, where the state, what they put in to figure out if you're going to qualify or not. You're above that, so you're not going to get any state revenue. Now there's a very high, if your effort gets really, really high, I think it's above 26%, then you would qualify for state aid if you get over 26%. I know the data runs that we've done on the bills that we introduced last year, that Albert Lea was a winner in getting state aid under those proposals by both lowering those or compacting those thresholds that you would have to get over to qualify for aid, but then also changing that aid levy mix in such a way that Albert Lea would have won on both of those ways. So,
Brad, what are you hearing about the pension bill?
oh, pension bill. Well, the Senate passed this pension bill unanimously, and the House seems to be holding on to the pension bill, and from just talking to some folks there, that it's one thing that everybody knows that the pension bill is going to pass, but like some poker players, they're kind of holding their card and trying to get something for releasing the pension bill. My guess is the pension bill will pass. If it was unanimously in the Senate, there's a couple people in the House that kind of vote against everything. So, but it would pass overwhelmingly in the House as well. It's just a matter as to how much they want to stare down on this. There's a lot of, this is a place where it's been bipartisan. Both houses, the Senate said we want to pass a clean pension bill this year. We're not going to put those other things in the bill that were in their bill last year that elicited the governor's veto. But we'll have to just wait and see. I think that it's, again, I think, that's when I should have said the pension bill along with the bonding and the tax bill, but the pension bill is something that, and the problem just keeps getting worse. That's, I think, the problem is that, and I think the legislators are well aware of that. If they don't get ahead of the game now, it's just another year where they're going to have to make adjustments, and it's just harder to make adjustments.
So I'm not familiar with it, but so what's the aid component? Is there any aid coming to districts with the increase in the pension?
Yes. The thing is now, it's basically the state is picking up the entire toll. They are not adding money on the formula. What they're doing is the pension subtraction. They're funding it all through the pension subtraction. So there's no. That means that the state is going to be doing the whole employer share. And then the employee share, I think in 5 years, goes up a quarter, and they're kind of tamping down the retiree benefits by, I think, 1% the COLA for a few years and things like that. So, but that's again, we're we just always the fear around this time of year is that some people try to get too clever by half and start to play their cards a little carelessly, and it was nicer when everybody, I always talk about the old days, and I think one of the things in the old days when it took a day to get a bill ready, now with technology, they can turn around a bill in no time flat. And as you'll see the last couple of years, there's been some really glaring errors because technologically they got it done, but they forgot to read the bill. And so, I mean, I think some things in these various bills. And so I think that what they want to do, it'd be nice if they just said, with a few days to go, here are the 3 or 4 things we want to do. Let's just do them and do them well. But, you know, my name's next. My name, you know, I never read the book Pollyanna, so I don't know if I am one or not. But
So one final question from me. What's driving this $126 million emergency? Is this the Metro teacher cuts? What are we hearing on that?
I think there's a couple things. I think first and foremost, the governor is looking. He was looking for something that had some traction. Both because this is one-time money. I think the number one, he wants to kind of balance this against the tax cuts. I think especially with the Senate tax bill, is pretty healthy long-term tax cuts that would, and I think the governor wants to kind of tamp that down a little bit. I think the other thing is he's not gotten much traction on his special ed. He hasn't gotten much traction on the School Readiness Plus, and so I think he's looking for something that they will buy. And I think that we're hearing from both the House and Senate chairs of education funding that, we funded schools last year. We shouldn't have to fund them again this year. I think, the thing is, I keep reading that only like 59 districts are cutting statewide, and my guess is it's probably closer to 259 districts statewide that are cutting. It's just a matter of, everybody makes certain cuts or certain rearrangements every year. It's just a matter, and call them cuts or call them reorgs, whatever the case might be, but I think that's there's just a lot of, again, the metro area, they're talking about the $108 million of cuts, but as we well know, some of those districts are cutting things that other districts in the state have never had. And I think the other thing is that with a lot of the small rural districts, you get declining enrollment, and they need some money to battle that declining enrollment. So I think it's, again, in C districts like Faribault and Forest Lake, Rockford, those are 3 districts that had a referenda fail last fall, and because of that, they said if we don't pass these referendums, big cuts are coming, and big cuts are coming. So I think so there's some high-profile districts that are really having to make considerable cuts. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Brad, and it was a great update, and we appreciate all your work.
Well, thanks for having me down there. I got to head back now and see. The other thing is that there's a bill that constitutional amendment to take the car repairs and sales tax from car repairs and put that into the trunk highway fund, and that takes about $265 million out of the general fund, and so we're kind of worried about that because we all want good roads, and ran into a couple here coming down on 35. There's a couple of spots could use a little work, but I guess the thing is I always worry when the legislature starts telling the voters, you do the work. I've got the election certificate, but I don't really want to make decisions anymore. And so I think I get a little bit worried from a civic standpoint that you send them up there to make tough decisions, and they shouldn't look for ways to beg off those tough decisions. So, okay. Well, again, thanks for giving me a little vacation, a little.
Stay for a drive.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the National School Board Association report. Dr. Funk.
A conference down in San Antonio a few weeks ago, and there were a lot of great sessions, and I'm going to talk just briefly about 2 of them tonight. And, we've heard quite a bit about, over the years, board governance, what's that really mean? And so I sat in on a session that talked about a different way of looking at how boards are structured and the committees that they utilize. So as we move forward as a district and we look next towards next winter about reorganizing for the upcoming, for the new board, I thought these are some things that we can maybe take a look at, or we could take a look at them sooner if you want. But they talk about 3 elements of a well-developed board governing architecture. A well-defined board governing role, strong board self-management capacity, and a well-designed board governing structure. So go ahead and scroll down there, Angela. So basically, they talk about how we should structure school boards, and they talk about 3 different areas if you're looking at committee work or kind of roles of the board. Strategic and operational planning, performance oversight and monitoring, and community relations. Go ahead. So Doug Eady's the guy who was he's a school district board consultant, and he was the one who was doing the presentation. And kind of here's how he sees it, the most effective boards, how they operate. There's the board, and then there's a governance subcommittee, which is made up of the board chair, and then individuals from each of the other, a lead person from the other 3 areas. And as I said, it's planning and development, performance oversight, and then community relations. So the board operations committee is headed by the chair, standing committee chairs and the superintendent, and they coordinate committee work, develop the board agenda, manage the admin board partnership, and they oversee the performance of the whole board. Then the planning committee works with the superintendent in the following different areas: updating district's values and vision statements, identifying strategic issues facing the district and setting strategic goals, and, you know, which we now have a finance committee who would look at budget or financial issues or the audit. That would fall under the auspices of the planning committee. Okay. The monitoring committee would take a look at performance, anything data. Okay, how are we doing financially as a school district overall? How are our students doing educationally? Administrative performance of the administration superintendent, and then you know, any major policies that would fall in aligned with performance. And then the external stakeholder relations committee updates the district's desired image. They're the ones who really are into engaging the community relations, and they would be the ones who would participate in maybe some external groups, like we have we've got the business education committee right now that meets with the chamber. We got the family services collaborative that meets, and these folks would be meeting with them. So this is just an example of that committee. And I think is that it, Angela? Yep. So I'll send those over to you, but that's just instead of having committees like we currently do of, a finance committee or a buildings and grounds committee or policy committee, it would be readjusting those and go from those committees to something along these lines. So it's some food for thought. So questions, comments?
You're going to send it out so we can review it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So then the second thing that I think the board would find pretty interesting, particularly with the pathways work we're doing here as a school district, I went to a session on a group of school districts in upstate New York who are embedding career and technical education into their school system and their community. So we'll go through these fairly quickly. Here's a picture of schools in 1967. There we are in 2017. Very similar in a lot of ways. So what employers, and this is again from New York, are telling folks, and I think if you were asked our employers here at Albert Lee, you'd hear something very similar. Students need more real world experience. They need to focus on collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and taking initiative. Students tell us that they're not engaged at school, they're bored, they're tired of just sitting and listening, and they want to do things. Teachers tell us students need to be better engaged, more motivated, they don't have enough opportunities for outside engagement, and our curricular demands stifle creativity. So this is kind of what is driving this group in New York. So they have career tech ed, they have business partners, and they're partnering with higher ed. This is really along the lines of where we're going here in Albert Lea. So they talk about putting the classrooms in industry, taking them out of the schools, partnering with various businesses in the community, providing college-level opportunities, students working alongside the pros in a real-world setting, and ongoing professional development for the teachers, and every day is an internship for the kids. So in this program, they had 4 different embedded CTE programs. They had automotive technology, physical therapy professions, marketing and communications, and early childhood education. So go ahead and scroll and click on the video.
Students fire on all cylinders at OCM BOCES Automotive Technology course. They study basic mechanical skills in a nationally certified automotive service excellence program at Drivers Village. They learn best practices, then head under the hood.
I'm kind of a more hands-on learner than classroom learner, so it makes it a lot easier for me to comprehend and kind of apply the things to the field.
Students complete their training with experience in all forms of auto repair, from brakes, engine and suspension response, to onboard computerized control diagnosis. Students can earn internships and a career and technical endorsement on their diploma when they successfully complete industry standard technical assessment.
We're kind of at the heart of dealership, so we get way more hands-on and kind of more in the field experience.
Make it happen with OCM BOCES.
So that is an example of taking the classroom and moving it right into the auto shop at the local dealership. Next one is physical therapy, and let's watch this video quick. Or maybe not so quick. There it is. Oh. Try, click on the link and see if you can try it through Explorer. There's an Explorer tab right at the bottom of the screen. Yep. Well, anyhow, we won't watch that one, but basically that was a video of students who actually were taking classes at a local hospital, and they would take classes during the, for part of the day, and then they would work within the unit for part of the day. And so that was very interesting. I'll send you the slide set so you can try to maybe watch it at home. Keep on going. The next one I'll show you here quick is mass marketing. And so these actually were students working at a TV station for public television. And click on this.
A working public TV and radio operation is the classroom for students who head into the studio with OCM BOCES Media Marketing Communications program at WCNY. Students learn how to produce TV, radio, marketing, and multimedia campaigns when they attend classes alongside educators and work with professional staff.
When I discovered that it was going to be at WCNY in real studios with real equipment, that just seemed really incredible to me.
Students head into the field with production teams, run camera with WCNY TV studio crews, and coordinate their own video shoots. They direct radio programs and even step in front of the microphone. Students also engage in dual credit courses with college instructors.
It was really interesting getting to work with like real professionals.
Make it happen with OCM BOCES.
So again, that's just an example of taking the classroom out of the high school and moving it into the community and working with your community partners. And then the last one. Okay. And the last one is, do they have it on there? Maybe they don't. Might have deleted it by accident, but it was early childhood. So this is, we sent a team up to Alexandria. Neil, you were part of that team that went up there. We've got Johanna working with Riverland, with CTE, with our youth apprenticeship programs, different things in the community. And so this appears to be, and again, this one was from New York, this appears to be a trend that education is going into to address some of the concerns that the workforce, the teachers, and what the students are saying about the current education system. And so as we talk about this and we talk about strategic goals for the district long term, I think that this is an area that is a real growth opportunity for Oberlin area schools. Thank you. Yeah, yep.
I feel like as you go through high school, it definitely gets much more relevant and you have a lot more work. But, the first year is like up till 10th grade, you realize that you at least had a lot of downtime. You didn't cover a whole lot. And then, there's a lot of stuff that you won't use. Even if you go into college, like 4-year university, but like you're not going into that major that like you could have saved some time, like taking a math class or whatever if you're going to be a philosophy major or something. Well, like for example, next year we are required to take not a math class, but an English class again. And if I hadn't been required to take an English class all 4 years, I could have taken another English class in 11th grade and 10th grade and completed that. But like, we have the requirement, so I have to keep going, even if I was going to go into like a math major or a education major or something. It's kind of what I see.
I'm kind of with Gigi on that one. My 11th grade year, I did college writing papers, and I also did humanities. So that was 2 English classes. And then this year, I'm doing another English. I love English, so I'm okay with it. But there, some of it I do know I'm not going to use. So some of it I don't believe is relevant, but
How about, not for you two, okay? How about for the general student at Oberly High School? What do you think they think about the high school experience?
In relevancy or in production?
Relevancy, is it, are kids bored at school?
Yep.
Okay. Do they just sit there and, okay.
I mean, that all depends on the student. It's not.
Right, but what I'm saying for an average student at Oberly High School, not a high flyer like you're sitting at this table.
The average student's gonna, like 1 or 2 classes, and the rest of them they're not gonna care as much about.
Okay.
yeah, I would say that's accurate. I would say most kids go for like 2 hours that they really genuinely find interesting, and then the rest, they're just trying to pass.
So is that a legitimate, fair assessment of the performance of our school, of our educational system? And if students are bored,
I mean, I don't think it's so much a problem with like the classes, but the person just doesn't want to take that class. So, but they kind of have to, or they're going to at least.
like geometry, for example? Nobody, if they have no interest in geometry, and it's a requirement.
Like anything. If I love one class, another person's gonna hate it.
I think that's been our story as well when we were in school. We didn't love every class, but I wonder if it's just a different perspective of a different generation and a different outlook in kind of finding the value or the way we look at classes that we're not interested in. We're not getting that instant gratification that we love the material, but still we knew we had to do it, and it actually was just a piece of persistence and perseverance, and that's actually one of the soft skills that I think I've just read this week that this generation of students doesn't have when they're coming out of school or looking for summer jobs. They don't have the soft skills of some of the ones that were listed there, the communication, other pieces like that, and then another one was the perseverance. And I just wonder if it's just a different kind of peer group that's coming through that's different than our generation.
Like one more thing on that. I know that our school offers like a personal finance and econ classes and stuff. And I know a lot of people who took that personal finance and really liked it. Like they saw that, oh, I'm really going to use this like in my life. So like maybe that would be an example of really life skills that we would be teaching. So that was, I thought, a really good class. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think when we look at the future and look at the jobs that are out there, there's a lot of technical jobs that are not being filled today. And I mean, everywhere you turn, you can read those articles, and I think we've had a lot of things that we've seen in other school districts that from MSBA updates and so on. And so I think that every student has skills and gifts. The challenge is to bring those skills and gifts out of them so that they can be successful in the future. And that's not always easy because some like math, some don't, some like English, some don't. And it's good that we're not all the same, but that creates some challenges, and I think it's good that we talk about it and analyze it. So, any other questions or comments?
Could we go back to the committees, the other piece about the governance and things? Yeah, and then where the committees were kind of in that flow chart. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, how does this interface with other communication pieces of the district? For example, like right now, the district posted a comment on my Facebook page that I didn't make comments, that I never brought up concerns in a facilities meeting where the referendum issue was being brought up. So how would this be any different, and how can we fix that piece? Why is that still allowed to be out there? Because it is false. It's a false comment.
I believe you've seen the legal comment from our attorney on that, Jill, and that's all I can say.
And again,
Right. I would say we need to talk about this, since that's a different topic.
it is a different topic, which I'd like to talk about in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay. Moving on to next item is adjournment. Is there a motion to do so? Okay, is there a second? Second. Meeting is adjourned.